What's up, everyone? Welcome to Writer's Realm Podcast, and thanks for joining us on this epic adventure we call writing. We're your hosts, Bob Adato,
Holly Rebelliard.
And Austin Matthews.
and today we're going to talk about Romantasy with Brittney Gossin. Welcome, Brittany.
Hey, thank you. Thank you so much.
Love to have you here. And then, where can we find you?
I have Instagram has been my main social media platform, which is Brittney Gossin Writes, all one word, WRITES, Brittney Gossin Writes.
Right.
I'm on Facebook. I have a TikTok, but haven't really figured out how to TikTok. So it's there, but yeah, Instagram has been amazing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so just the Instagram?
Yeah, pretty much
So
Instagram.
far.
I have a website where you can, keep up to date with all my stuff. But yeah, Instagram is where I post most of my things.
Okay, great. So that's where we can find all the latest info about Brittney Gossin. And do you have a book?
So I am coming out with my debut novel, which I just so happen to have right here, handy dandy. Yes. So you can see it's Dreamwalker. It is a new adult romantasy, which means that the characters are my main character. Her name is Ella Windsor. She is 17. She turns 18 in the book. And new adult is generally characters who are out of high school. Young adult would be characters who are in high school. So it's a new adult romantasy novel, so fantasy romance.
Right. Okay. And what's it about?
So that's such a loaded question. And
right.
I wrote it, so you would think that it would be perfectly fine, but it's
this is the hardest part about being an author, is this moment right here.
It is. Because it's like how much do you give?
Right.
So I guess we could say, so Ella Windsor wakes up from a terrible nightmare. In the nightmare, the creature gives her a wound on her arm, and she wakes up to find that it has manifested on her body. So she, and then not only does the wound manifest on her body, but the dagger that she created in her dream is now in her bed physically. Ooh. Yes. Wow. So she goes to school, and apparently she can see nightmares in her town who are killing people in her town, but nobody else can see them. So in order to prevent additional deaths, she's forced to travel to the astral realm with stunningly handsome Ethan Wessex, who is a lieutenant of the Astral Guard. And there she finds a realm on the brink of a catastrophic war. So it's the Dreamwalkers who are they have latent magic, and their magic only manifests when the nightmares aren't in check. So Ella may just be the missing piece to stopping the Nightmare King from taking over not just the dream world, but every single waking world in existence.
Right on. The Nightmare King. Oh my gosh.
Yes, the Nightmare King.
This sounds amazing. Good for you, Brittany.
Whenever I tell my students about it, they're like, okay, so like Freddy Krueger. And I'm like, okay, like I see where you're getting that from. Kind of, not really, but like, okay.
Right. And then Dokken, back in the day, hair metal band, has a song called Dream Warriors that I think they used for one of the Freddy Krueger movies, actually. But anyway, that'd be the perfect one to listen to. Well, yeah. Okay, so is Ella a princess, or is she farm girl, or what's her background?
Well, so she comes from the mortal world. She does find out a whole bunch of family secrets that she didn't even know existed. Not only does she struggle with her newfound powers, but then she's stuck in a love triangle between two very handsome men. But it's not the normal love triangle where they're friends. It's just she's between these two guys. It's like one is like super mysterious and gives very like she's mine vibes, but the other one is a very cinnamon roll main male character. So, you know, it's like we're torn, you know, she's torn between
How do you choose? Oh.
right, you know, like so, you know, so she's very torn between that. You know, and then there's found family, epic battles, magic, all kinds of different species, if you will, because, you know, dreamwalkers come from every single waking realm. So you have fairies and elves and dwarves and dragons and vampires and, you know, all because if, you know, if it's a if it dreams, it can go to the astral realm.
Wow.
That is so fascinating. So I have to ask now, I know you were accepting ARC, and for people who don't know, that's the advanced reader copies of your novel. Are you still accepting
Oh,
ARC
yes.
applications? Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
please. Yes, please. I'm trying to get as many ARC applications as possible.
Now, how do we do that?
So I have a Google Doc linked right in my bio on my Instagram. You can go right in there, click for the ARC submissions. I also have been putting together my street team. So those who have applied to be an ARC reader, I sent out an email asking if anybody wanted to be part of the street team. And if you don't know what a street team is, it's a team that helps market and hype up your book and get people excited about it. And I've been so lucky, just so utterly blessed. And it might sound cliche to say that, but I'm so floored with just the outpouring of support and love that everybody's been giving. You know, I really do. I just feel so honored. So, yeah.
That's amazing. I think it's so important to have those communities. And I think that especially the way that things are going with more people, you know, doing self-publishing and things like that, things like your street teams and those advanced reader copies, they make a huge difference for you and for your book.
Yeah.
So it's so important to have like people out there that are cheering you on, right? That understand how difficult and how competitive the industry is.
Yeah, well, especially because I mean, a lot of people don't know this, and I didn't know this, you know, but Amazon won't push your book out to other customers until you have at least 100 reviews.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So like reviews are so important, and the way that you get them is by giving ARC readers the opportunity to read your book and hope that they review it, because only about 50% of ARC readers will actually follow through with submitting reviews, which are so needed, because that's what, you know, that's what pushes the book out to other, you know, other readers.
Now, Holly, are you, well, Holly also, but Brittany, are you are you querying for a publisher, or what are you doing so far?
I did query at first, and oddly enough, I ended up doing a rejection series on my Instagram, and I read all of the rejection letters
Okay.
that I received, because you just get them so much more than acceptances, you know, and people, whenever, especially authors, whenever they get a rejection, they always take it personal. And my hope was that they would see, like, you're not alone. Like, everybody gets rejection. And actually, I got a rejection on Valentine's Day.
That's the worst. That was rude.
So I read it like it was a love note. And you know, I put Michael Bublé's L is for, you know, L is for the way you look at. I put that song like in the background. I was like, let's just read this sweet love note from one of the agents that rejected me.
Yeah.
So, you
That's
know,
funny. That's
yeah, like,
great. What a great attitude to have.
yeah, I mean, you gotta have fun with it. Like, you know, it's more likely to get rejected than it is to get accepted. But I had always had it in my head that I was going to self-publish. I'm just very hyper independent and hate waiting on people. So, okay, well, I can end up doing this myself, and I can, you know, have a say in everything. And, you know, a friend of mine that I work with, she's a teacher as well. She's a New York Times bestseller. And, you know, I said to her, what would you recommend? Do I query or do I publish. And she's like, Brittany, the hardest part about being an author is marketing. She was like, and you're already doing it. She was like, so she's like, you should just self-publish, because the reason why you go traditional is to help with the marketing, but ultimately you end up having to market yourself anyway. So,
True.
you
I
know,
think that's something a lot of people don't realize, that they'll do the initial push, but after that, yeah, you're gonna have to, unless you're a huge name, right? I mean, making millions and millions, but like, yeah, you're gonna have to do the same marketing as you would, self-publishing. So that's great.
So regarding Romantasy, for those people out there who are listening who don't understand or don't know, I guess I should say, we like to do a spice rating on 1 to 5. And so if you had to rate your book in terms of spice, and I like to laugh, I think that this is like a warning for some people sometimes. So you're not in over your head. Where would you rate your book in terms of like spice rating being like a romantasy?
my spice rating for Dreamwalker is definitely a 1. So my original idea was to make this a young adult romantasy. But I moved away from that because I just really love the new adult genre. But there are, so Dreamwalker is definitely slow burn. And then there's one closed door spice scene, because Ella is 18 and she's a virgin. So it doesn't make sense for Ella to go haunting Adelaide in Dreamwalker when she doesn't have any experience, you know?
Yeah.
So I wanted to keep it very in line with who my character is, because, you know, they really do take on a life of their own and personalities of their own, and it just didn't make sense for her. But I am already working on my second book, not of Dreamwalker. I'm making a multiverse. So my second book is within my multiverse, and it's definitely spicy. It's like a 4. So, and I wanted to do that because I want to be able to market to all types of readers. So like if you're somebody who doesn't necessarily like a lot of spice, then Dreamwalker would be great for you. But if you're somebody who does like spice, then my other series would be great for you. And, you know, they're standalone to where you don't have to read one in order to enjoy the other.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's a fantastic way to do it. Absolutely. Because then you can kind of cover everything, right? And I mean, people who like a lot of spice, if they like a lot of spice and they read your book and they like it, odds are they're going to go and read the other one as well anyways, right?
Yeah.
Surprisingly, I know a lot of people who just love like spice off the charts, and they will go and read, like they have a few authors where they'll go and read their series that have absolutely no spice at all, because they just love stuff that the author has done outside of that. And you know, at that point they don't care. They're like, I love spice, but I love this author and I love the way they write, and I'm going to read it anyways.
I do have to say, one of my beta readers made me feel really good, because she said that with Dreamwalker, if you took away the romance, the plot still holds up, which makes me happy, because I wanted to write a fantasy with a romance subplot, you know, because like Ella grows, you know, she definitely grows, but I mean, she is a strong female character. And she isn't the type that is going to be ruled by a guy. You know, and in the book, she's actually often more prompted by the relationship she has with her friends, than it is, oh, I love this guy and I need to be with this guy and he is my everything and I'm nothing without him. Like, that's just not how she is, you know? So, and I really appreciated that my beta reader did say that, you know, and she said that I've actually gotten a lot that Dreamwalker reminds people a lot of The Cruel Prince by Holly Black, because that's also a fantasy with a subplot of romance. And if you take the romance out of it, the plot still holds true, which I wanted. That was my goal.
Well, I think this is a good point that you're making here, that there still needs to be a plot and a story. Like, even though it's
Mhm.
romantasy, you're calling it romantasy. It's definitely a genre, and there's those romantic elements in there. That's all they are, just elements. They're not the
Hmm.
entire story, right?
Right.
Yeah, and I
Right.
mean, it's just like making any character. Like, you don't want the character to have like one note to them. So like your story should have more than one note, and it should be more complicated than that. Like a a romance that's just a romance might feel very flat, especially if you're doing fantasy length novels. So if you're doing,
Mhm.
80,000 words and all you've got is the fantasy, or all you have is the romance, it can feel really dry.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I like reading, and there's times where, I like romance. Like, I enjoy Elsie Silver, and I read Flawless in one day and ate it up and loved every single second of it, and but I knew what I was getting into. You know what I mean? But like, when you read a romantasy, like, I read because I love fantasy. I love fairies and elves and witches and warlocks and magic and, all of those things. And like, I want that, but I also want there to be some driving force that the character is moving towards,
Mhm.
Okay. Well,
which
what
is
is
exactly like saying, like, I hate spice for the sake of spice.
Yeah.
Like, I need spice with a plot. Like, I need it to work within the plot. Like, if that, if the situation occurs, that it works with it, but just to have, oh, now it's time for a spicy scene. Oh,
Mhm,
here is another one. Like,
mhm,
that's, I
Yeah.
just,
mhm,
I think the slow burn is way better anyways than just throwing spice in there, right? Because again, a slow burn is character development.
mhm.
There's no way to have slow burn without having character development. And what is a good story without character development? Right.
right.
So
Yeah.
they just really go hand in hand.
Yeah, and it's not
I
really
agree.
romance if there's not character development, I feel like.
Yeah.
And then even think about relationships. Think about when you get
Hmm.
involved in a brand new relationship. There's slow burn there. You're like, oh, like, am
Hmm.
I gonna, like, are they gonna kiss me now? Like, are, like, oh, I can't stop thinking about them. Like, when are we gonna, when are they gonna make a move? Like, all of that anticipation, like, the anticipation just keeps you
Mm,
coming back for more, so
those are
I
great points.
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm going to interject with a really funny story about myself right now.
Sweet.
Speaking of that, when my husband and I went on our first date, we were sitting at a bar top and he he had like leaned forward to say something to me and I thought he was trying to kiss me. So I like threw myself forward at him and kissed him.
I
Obviously,
actually
it worked out, but
It worked out.
I had the opposite happen whenever I was in high school. So I was at the pool with a friend of mine, and they like leaned over to kiss me, and I thought they were going to look at something, and so I turned to look, and they're like,
Yeah,
and it's like, oh, I didn't realize that you were, oh, my bad.
that's funny.
It's like, I
yeah.
don't know what to do with my hands. Like,
Hmm.
Yeah. All
And
right.
see that right there, Austin, is like a perfect example of something you could put in a romantasy novel. And it's just
Hmm.
that like those funny, quirky characters who are just, completely clueless that their best friend is completely in love with them. And they're like
Mm.
looking like, oh, what do you see? Or,
Mm.
I
well,
appreciate you calling me clueless.
here's a
back in
great
high school.
Yeah, it's
here's a
true.
great
I'm
for
still
here's a
clueless.
great foreshadowing for you. So I met my husband. Him and I have been together for 14 years. We've been married for
Wow.
10. Yes, we have 3 kids. So we met at the gym, and at the time I had a boyfriend, and every single time he would see me, he's like, "Did you break up with your boyfriend yet?" And I'm like, "No." I'm like, "Who is it?" He's like, "Well, how are we going to get married if you don't break up with your boyfriend?" And I'm just like, "Who is this guy?" And now we're married. Like,
Wow. It
like,
does work, guys. It does work. Just keep saying
Well,
that.
well, let's not encourage that necessarily across the board.
I mean, it worked. No, but that's a cute
Yeah.
story. That's awesome.
It is.
Yeah. I think going back to like spice as well. So I'm the novel that I'm currently editing right now, slowly. Ugh. Um, it's kind of at I'm gonna say like a 3, maybe pushing a 4
Wow.
of spice. And I'm still trying to mentally prepare myself for when my readers, you guys, get to get to these like more spicy scenes in the book, because this is like my first time writing about this stuff, and I'm not really sure how we have a writers group, and so I'm like, oh my gosh, should I just skip over this whole chapter in my writers group?
No.
Because I don't want to discuss it. But then it's also like, you as a writer of, you know, something that's a little spicier, or of any type of romance, you know, you have to be there to, you know, take the feedback and to like put yourself out there, because when readers come up to you and they start asking you about these scenes, you have to, you know, prepare yourself.
They're like, was it really this big?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm like, you know, something to keep in the back of your mind when you're trying to write any level of spice, guys, is just like, make sure that when you have to present it to your readers and they discuss it with you, that you're going to be able to discuss it with them without like getting absolutely mortified.
Yeah. I also edit. So I have editing services. I do editing, I do formatting, and I just finished a manuscript, and it was a like a mafia romance. And it was a spicy mafia romance, and the my client, she did such a great job. And when I put that, I was like, man, like, wow, like that was really hot, like really great job. She's like, oh my God, so it wasn't cringe? I was like, no, it was not cringe at all. I promise, it was great. Like, you know, so, but it's terrifying as a writer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you are literally putting a piece of you on paper and just laying it bare for everyone to see, for everyone to critique. You know, it's really difficult. You really have to have a thick skin. You do.
Mm-hmm.
I never thought about like how vulnerable you have to be to write any level of like romance or spice. I never really, probably says a lot about me that I never made that connection, but
Well, it's one of those
You're
things,
growing. You're growing.
yay.
I feel like it's not like something we openly talk about all the time. And so it's like, yeah, it is something where it's like, oh yeah, like this is how, you know, normal am I? How vanilla am I? How weird is this? Like, is this okay? Like, yeah.
Yeah. And then it's funny because so a friend of mine just launched her book. It released yesterday, and it's called Obsidian Tide. She's awesome. She's also on Instagram, and she did a like virtual launch party. And one of the questions that somebody asked her was, which characters do you see yourself in? Like mostly. And I mean, I was thinking about that question, and I, like, as you know, for myself, and I think that the characters that we write have elements of us in all of them, you know, whether it's, you know, taking, maybe we're extroverted and there's characters that are extroverted, but maybe we wish that we were this way and that character is that way, you know. So it's you know, you are literally laying your soul bare on paper, you know, in one way or the other. And it's scary for people, you know, for you to have people read it.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. So if you were talking to someone who is starting to get into romantasy or wanted to start writing about it, what would be some advice that you would give them?
Okay, so this is a big debate in the writing community, but I stand on this side and I stick to it. Outline your story. Outline. Do not be a pantser. Don't.
Okay, thank you,
But-
Brittany. Take
We're
care,
really
Brittany. We have to go now.
You're
So
setting
sorry.
yourself up for failure. You're gonna have no idea where you're going. You're gonna get
Yeah.
into the middle and you'll be like, oh my gosh, what was I saying?
Especially a big fantasy. It's definitely. Yeah. So go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brittany.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, outline. And it doesn't even have to be anything like super sophisticated. You know what I mean? I'm talking like a sentence. Like, you know, and something that's helpful for me is the app Plotter. It's Plottr. It's on iPhone. I use it on my iPad. And it has templates that you can use when outlining. So I used the hero's journey template for Dreamwalker as like, you know, the bare bones, because, you know, that template has like 20 chapters, but Dreamwalker has 32. So, but what was nice is that I'm like, okay, like I know that Ella is going to go through a hero's journey. And I teach hero's journey. I teach freshman English. So, I mean, the hero's journey is something that I actively teach to my students every year. And I knew that I wanted to write something along those lines. But what was nice is there was times where I'm like, what is she doing? I'm like, where does she need to be right now? I'm like, I just don't know. So, and then I go back to my outline. I'm like, oh, okay, like this is the spot that should happen. And, and sometimes the spot that should happen, I was like, that's really terrible. Like, I'm going to change it and I'm going to add to it. But at least I had a frame of reference, like, because you can sit and be a pantser and just write, just write for vibes. But, ultimately you need a conflict. Like my dog doesn't like when I don't pay attention to him. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No worries. I was actually
so-
just talking to somebody in my writing community earlier today because I am a hardcore pantser, and he just
Are you
released an episode
triggered?
of.
I'm sorry.
No, actually, it's interesting because he just released a podcast episode for his podcast talking about story structure, and he was talking about how it's important, and he's like, trigger warning for the pantsers out there, and I was like, reached out to him, was like, listen, I don't outline before I write, but I have all the story structures in the very front of my notebook because as I'm writing, I'm thinking about story structure and I'm writing my outline as I'm writing that rough draft. For me, my rough draft is just a really detailed outline. So like I might have to throw away half of it whenever I go to do my second draft, but yeah, it's just one of those things. Like story structure is super important, whether you're outlining or not, pantser or planner.
Yeah. I know I have my master's degree in creative writing with a concentration in fiction. So when I had to submit my final project, it was actually 40,000 words of a manuscript. So I have half a book written, and I had every intention of finishing that book, but I 10 out of 10 pantsed that one. And when I went to go back to it after I graduated, I was like, I don't know where to go. So her name is Mia, and she's literally stuck in the Bane King's castle. And I feel very bad for her because I just imagine that she's like looking around like, Brittany, get me out of here. Like, where are you? What are you doing? And I have every intention of going back to her. Because actually that book is in the multiverse of Dreamwalker. So she's just gonna have to hang out there a little bit longer until I can outline her book.
That's awesome.
But yeah, it really, its structure is like is really important. But grad school is what taught me to outline.
I agree. I'm a big outliner. I call myself a plantser because I outline everything and I outline like whose point of view this is going to be, what the chapter is about, and where it takes place. And then from there, I'll kind of wing it a little bit in terms of like, the character interactions and just, feel out the situation and let the characters go in the direction that they will. But like you said, I know a couple chapters later where they need to be. So I can keep like, if they're going over this way, I'm like, all right, we can take a detour, but we still also need to come back this way.
Yeah. So whenever I'm going through and filling out my outline as I'm writing, because I don't do it beforehand, I always include also a section of like, what is the significance of this chapter? Because if I can't clearly say like, why is this significant to the story, it doesn't need to be there. And then two is, what part of the story structure is this filling? Like, is this part of the rising action? Is it like it has to clearly fall into one of those, or it also I had to get rid of it. So
yeah. Something else that's funny. Have you guys ever had your characters take over?
Yes.
yeah,
Or like,
I had to kill one
awful.
because of it.
Yeah, do something that I was not planning. Yeah, absolutely.
or like a character dies and like you're just as surprised about it.
Yeah, no, I had my main character in one of my first books I wrote, and he went and challenged somebody, and I was like, he's too overconfident. He won't back down. So I killed him. And then he was no longer the main character halfway through the book.
Who are you, Game of Thrones? Like, goodness.
No plot armor. No.
George R.R. Martin over here.
Yeah, so then it switched
Killing
to
off the
like
main
go through all
characters.
the other characters' points of view for the rest of the story, just like going from one to the other.
Yeah.
It was fun.
One of my characters dies, and I was sitting in the living room and I was writing it, and my husband was sitting on the one couch and I was sitting on the other one, and all of a sudden I was like, oh, And he's like, what? I was like, she's gonna die.
Yeah.
Like, why are you surprised? He was like, you're writing it. And I'm like,
yeah.
what? I just didn't intend for that to happen. And like,
Yeah.
but like,
It's that's like the best. Like, I don't think people that aren't writers understand how it's just like, watching a movie, reading a book. Like, writing a book is just like that. And it's like you can be as surprised.
Yeah.
And so, like, for me, like, that character was supposed to go on, conquer the other seven kingdoms, unite them into an empire, and like, nope, he died halfway through. Sorry.
Well, sometimes I feel silly because I'll be writing, the book, and then I'll run into an inevitable plot hole, and I'm like, well, how can I figure this out? I need to do this and that. I need to make it work, and I'm like, well, wait the heck! I'm the creator here. I can make whatever I want. Okay, character B gone. There you go. No more plot hole. We figured that out, didn't we? You know what I mean? It's so silly.
The problem is though, is that like you don't want like Deus Machina, where like,
Yeah.
like if you have a plot hole, like it has to be plausible in the realm of your world. Like,
Yeah.
I'm making a fantasy world, but it still has to be plausible in the realm of the world, So like which is also tough. Because if you've established, like a character has this power but this limitation, and then now they're stuck because of their limitation, you're just like, oh man, what did I do?
Right. I will say one of the big things with like the Deus Ex Machina is that it's basically the reverse of Chekhov's gun. Like, you fired a gun in the third act, but you never showed me that it existed. So like if you get to there, well, you do the thing, use the gun in the third act, and then go back in your next draft and add the gun in the first act.
Right. Yeah, for sure. There's been times on my current book, the second book that I'm working on, I have less of an outline with this one than I did with Dreamwalker. So I guess I'm kind of like, what did you call it? Like, what is it? Like plotting, like a pantser plotter? Like,
yeah, it's planting is what I like
okay,
to
so I'm
call
definitely
it.
planting this one because like I outlined the beginning, like I know the beginning and I know the ending, but I'm just like, oh darn it, like what am I gonna do in the middle? And but as I'm doing it, so as I'm in like chapter 14, I'm like, oh man, this is a great element. But I'm like, oh, but like now I have to go back to chapter 3 and allude to it. So, and then and then I have to do that immediately because I have ADHD. And if I don't do it immediately, I will completely forget about it. And then the next thing I know, my beta readers are like, okay, but where's the
Yeah, dropping comments in there has been a lifesaver because I'm also like super ADHD, and so I'm just like, okay, I'm not going to deal with it, but I'm going to make a note right now to deal with it so that I feel satisfied with that.
Yeah.
Hey, I've got a left field question that has like nothing to do with what we're talking about, but I have to ask.
Speaking of ADHD.
Speaking of ADHD.
Because I feel like I don't think we've ever asked this question before. Brittany, do you listen to music or no music while writing?
So it depends. I am definitely a mood listener. And generally I listen to songs that put me in the vibe of the book.
Okay.
For Dreamwalker, I listened to a lot of classical and instrumental. But for this current book, I've been listening to a steampunk playlist.
Ooh.
Nice.
That is also not there's no lyrics because I will then vibe with the music. And the next thing I know, I'm like singing to the music, neglecting my, my words. So, yeah, but like today I wrote about 900 words and I didn't have any music playing.
Wow.
But that's because my phone was like vibrate, like going off the wall because my street team just got together today.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, so like, and they're awesome, like they're absolutely amazing, but it was like buzz, bzz, bzz, bzz. So like for me it ended up being like and that was like my vibe, like what I was when I was writing. But yeah, I'm absolutely a mood listener, but the vibe has to go with the book
Mhm.
and has to go with the scene. Otherwise, I can't visualize it the way that I need to.
Yeah, I'm very much the same way. I love having something going on. I feel like it just makes me, it increases the flow of my writing a little bit better. Like I think it just gives me some sort of rhythm subconsciously. And so I'm able to get through my writing a lot faster. It just flows better. However, I usually listen to like some really nice classical stuff, and like, you know, whether it's intense classical or relaxing classical, depending on what sort of scenes I'm writing. Except for, and I know we talked about this, I think on one of our recent podcasts, but except for when I'm dealing with this one character, who's my main character, and she has like this hilarious, she's like kind of like assassin style. She's a hell hunter, I call her. And she is totally badass. And her playlist, I guess, that I always listen to get in like the mindset of writing her, I also listen to when I'm at the gym. And it's really funny because I start to take on this persona of me being like this crazy like assassin killer when I'm at the gym.
That's what you're training for, isn't it? That's what you're training for. You're like, I'm at the gym. I need to be able to take down the bad guys. Like
yeah, absolutely. It's quite hilarious. Like I start getting into my character's mindset when I'm at the gym because of this playlist. It's quite hilarious.
What do you listen to when you're writing a spicy scene?
Same kind of like intense classical. It's very strange. It's very, very strange.
What is it? Al Green?
It's very white.
Yeah, some love, some
right,
jazzy love
some
music.
love music. I'll have to give that a try.
From South Park. So.
Yeah. Oh man.
All right.
Or you know what's been really good too? I put on like background videos on YouTube, like rain or thunderstorms.
Yeah, just some environmental.
So it's like noise, but not music. That's also been my vibe lately. And I put that on in my classroom too, and my kids really like it.
Yeah, I'll say something that helped me out with a lot of it was doing foreign language music, because then it's like it's got words and it feels familiar.
Okay.
Like I don't understand it, so I'm not getting distracted by it.
Ramstein.
Nice. Yeah.
Nice. So if because I've got 4 books down, and I barely have any romantic elements. Barely. That just wasn't a thing for me. But if I go, hey, after talking to Holly and Brittany, okay, Austin too, what if I started a romantasy? What are some key ingredients I'm going to need for this?
So definitely, I don't know. I think that's such a hard question, only because I think that everybody has a different style that they like to showcase it, you know. The way that I like the slow burn, like I love enemies to lovers, even though like Dreamwalker is not enemies to lovers. Like I love that trope. You know, I also love the I like being surprised by who the love interest would be, you know, very Sarah J. Maas in, you know, like where you fall in love with one character, but they end up not being the guy. But, you know, I think a lot of things, I think the romance element that a lot of romantasy readers like is the slow burn and the slow progression, and watching them go from friends to lovers or enemy, like the, you know, the progression of it and the development of that relationship.
So it would be a huge mistake if I had introduced 2 characters and then by say chapter 3 they're already throwing out I love yous. That'd be a huge mistake.
I mean, that's the same with any plot. Like you want it to take time, you want to like feel it and get into it, and so nothing should be resolved by chapter 3.
Yeah, can you imagine like the second act, Darth Vader's like, oh yeah, by the way, Luke Skywalker's my son. Anyway, let's move on with it.
Back it up.
Yeah.
Well, if he didn't tell Luke, then we'd all be like, oh, well, what's gonna happen?
Right. You know, although I mean, you could like, it would also be interesting that if they were in a relationship to begin with, and then, you know, you see how amazing it is, and then somebody does something to betray that. You know, so like that kind of you know, just like the drama of it, and you know, how are things going to change, and how are things going to shift, and like how are the feelings going to be. But one of my beta readers and I were talking about something similar to this, in the sense, so Ella, my main character, has a background in jujitsu. So, and she's been doing it since she was very, very little. And which helps because, I mean, she's going to essentially need to fight nightmares, you know. And something, when I was writing it, I'm like thinking to myself, something that I can't stand is when you have a character who has no experience, and then all of a sudden now they're like the best fighter ever, and you know, this. So, and I wanted it to feel authentic, like I wanted it to feel like it was plausible for the character, you know. And she does have a fighting background, maybe not in an army at a battle, you know, but she does have a fighting background and can take direction in that manner, you know. So one of my beta readers said that she enjoyed that, because she also can't stand when all of a sudden you have a character who can't do anything and now they're the greatest at it. So, because that's not real life, you know.
That's just, you know, the newest Star Trek trilogy is what that is. But yeah, like I think that's where like a lot of my romance stuff comes in. It's like it's established relationships, it's the conflict that comes in with like whatever they're going on, like the adventure, and like especially like if you do a hero's journey, it's like where I'm focusing isn't on the relationship, or like, you know, going through the hero's journey goggles. Like, yeah, everything is like you're going through these stressors together. So like, yeah, you might see somebody that you're like, oh man, like she's so awesome, he's so awesome, like let's get together. But then you get back to your, you know, hometown and your home village, and like, what do you have in common other than these past adventures that you're not going on anymore? Like, that's not really necessarily the best foundation for
Yeah,
romance.
right. Yeah. You know, and I think that like when, you know, when you're looking at plot, like you want, like I said earlier, just because it's in a fantasy world doesn't mean that it shouldn't be authentic and organic,
Yes.
you know. So, and it's, yeah, I mean, because they're still, because essentially when, I mean, you guys know, like when you're writing characters, they become like people. You know, I'm talking to my husband about Ella, and it's as if she is a real live person that I just hung out with.
That's neat.
So,
That's great. Then that's
Yeah.
what we want. We want.
Yeah,
We
it's like
want
whenever you write a
to.
scene and you make yourself cry, there's just something great about it.
Yeah.
oh my God, I wrote the last chapter. I ugly cried. I ugly
Oh.
cried. And then I actually have videoed it. I videoed it and I posted it.
Oh, wow.
And you know, I'm just like, watch me ugly cry as I finish the first draft of my very first novel. Like,
Oh man, that's so exciting.
yeah. And I don't cry pretty, but I didn't hide it either. So,
That's awesome.
you know.
All right. Well, guess what, Brittany? Here's something I didn't warn you about. We at the end, we were so busy with everything else. At the end of our podcast, we have a little bit of time for "Don't do this." That's how we end our podcast. Don't, when you're writing a romantasy, don't do this. So I just sprang that on you, and usually we all know it's coming, but I'll bet none of us have an idea of what we're going to talk about right now. So that's what we're doing right now. Time for don'ts. Let's see, writing a man. I can't even. I have no qualifications for this. What am I going to say? I have no idea.
I mean, just think about, you know, you're married, you've got kids. What makes romance? What makes romance?
Brother.
No, your brother does not make romance.
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah.
No. Depends on the state. No, but no, I'm just kidding, guys. When writing romantasy, don't. I have no clue. I'm seriously.
I will start
Thank
then,
you.
because
Thank you.
I'll take the torch here.
Perfect.
Don't ignore your magic in a romantasy. So just going back to what Brittany said earlier is that you have that whole fantasy plot, but you have like a side of romance. And that's so important to remember because you do still need to have that plot there, and don't ignore your magic systems, because you can have a fully explored magic system, whether it's like a soft or hard magic system. You still need to have that there, or you can still have that there and have romance, and you don't have to sacrifice one for the other. So if you're going to write a romantasy, make sure that you're not neglecting that little bit, like your magic systems and the fantasy part of it. Otherwise, it just becomes a romance.
Yeah, and I'm gonna go ahead and jump off of that too, because whenever you're looking at like a romantasy, it's like you've got all this world building that's gone into it. Like if there are certain things about a culture that might find things that are like taboo, things that aren't, that we consider taboo, like consider all that stuff as you're going into it. So like one of my worlds is like there are immortals. Like, you know, think about elves that are thousands of years old. Like it's kind of weird that, you know, a 1,000-year-old person's dating a 20-year-old. Like maybe that's problematic.
It depends on how they look.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, that was Twilight, dude. That was
Yeah.
Twilight.
Yeah.
She was
Also,
like 16 or something.
Yeah,
it's coming back around too. It's a lot of very old fae men with these young girls, and we're okay with
they
it.
don't age.
We're okay with
They don't age. Age is just a number. Age is just a number.
It's a little bit more than a number.
Yeah. Okay. Wow.
When one has 4 digits and the other's got 2.
Yeah, but at that point, does it matter? Like,
what's the Seinfeld rule? Half your age plus 7. Like I think that's what Seinfeld says.
I have to pivot off that really quickly because I have to ask this question now. Brittany, out of all of the romantasy that you have read, who is your favorite romantasy character?
My favorite romantasy book is ACOTAR. It's A Court of Thorns and Roses. And I am an OG ACOTAR reader. Okay, like I, you know, now like all of a sudden ACOTAR, but like I read ACOTAR a long time ago, and it is still my favorite. It really is. It's still my absolute favorite.
I'm assuming a Rhysand, not a Tamlin.
Correct. Yes. And don't get me started on a Tamlin redemption arc. Like, F that guy. Like, no.
I know. So it's actually funny you picked that one. I love the series, but I don't know why, for some reason. And as much as I love Spice, for some reason, mine has always been Rowan Whitethorn. I don't know what it is about him, but he is just...
Yeah, okay.
That's my man.
I actually tried to talk my husband into naming our son Rowan. I'm not even joking. Like, he was like, no.
Yep.
No.
I have the whole list. I have like Rowan, Cassian. I haven't put Rune on there, but I do love that one.
Rune Dannon, you know. Listen, Sarah J. Maas can write some very spicy men, but Rhysand is still my number one.
That's it.
Doesn't matter. Yeah,
Thank you.
My number one will always be my number one.
Well, I feel like I've got to add some stuff to my reading list then.
Yeah.
You haven't read ACOTAR?
No, I haven't. Romantasy is not like my normal.
Oh my God.
So the most recent one I've read was Crave.
So there's this guy on TikTok, and he's just started picking up the ACOTAR books, but his reviews are absolutely hilarious because he reviews them like I don't even know how to explain it, but like he reviews them in a comical way where he like simplifies the plot and it's so good. I've read them and I will still watch his reviews just because of like the off color things that he will say about like, but yeah. Look up ACOTAR.
Hey, yeah.
Especially from guys.
Yeah, no kidding. We still need some don'ts here.
Yeah.
I'm not let me.
Yeah, Brittany's next.
So don't neglect the villain.
Villains need love too.
Right. They, you know, like you want to have well-rounded characters in even the villain. Like, and this stems from my grad class where I had to write the villain origin story for one of my villains. And I actually found that I enjoyed writing his origin story more than I enjoyed writing the novel. So, like make sure that they have like clear motivation. Like it can't just be, I'm the bad guy and I want to take over everything. You know what I mean? No, like there has to be, he needs a motivation and it can't just be because he's bad.
Yeah, I will say one of my favorite chapters to write in any of my stories is like to cut to like a chapter where it's from the POV of the bad guy. And instead of having him have like a high action scene, be like, oh, he's at home with his family and like taking care of the kids. And you're like, wait, but I thought I understood what this guy was all about.
Yeah.
Apparently I don't.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to go with, I think we're all kind of talking about make them real, make your characters real. We want to fall in love with your characters. But part of being a real character as / a real person is that we're dysfunctional. Like we all have our issues, we all have our problems. So even though, like Brittany was talking about, she described her male characters as what, absolutely handsome, they're gorgeous, but they're probably messed up. There's something in there, they're flawed characters, right?
Yeah.
Something in, it's not their face, there's not big scar going down their face. I'm not talking about that. But like more interesting are what's deep inside their tragic backstory. So don't forget any of that. Yeah, make them beautiful, long hair, no hair. I don't know what's in these days.
Right.
I have no clue.
Yeah.
I don't know if it, but yeah. So what's going on the inside? What are, yeah, like Brittany just said, what's the motivations, but what else is going on? Yeah, we talked about tragic backstories before. So dysfunctional, don't forget about dysfunctional.
Yeah, not to have a tangent on everybody's piece. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
Austin.
I know.
Brittany's talking.
I know. Go ahead.
Okay. No, people don't want to read about perfect people. Nobody's perfect. And
that's a great point.
A lot of things that I see that readers hate is when you have a main character who isn't flawed. Like you have these characters, and people also, things that I've seen is that readers don't like when you have a character and bad things happen around them, but nothing bad happens to them. You know what I mean? So, which as I was writing, I tried to be mindful of, like, of course, if your character is in a battle, they're going to get hurt. I mean, unless they have like this super shield around them that like protects them from that, and that's but people get hurt, and your character is a person. And they should walk away with some cuts and bruises, and whether it's emotional or physical, just like us. Yep.
Yeah. So I was just going to say, one of the big pet peeves I do have with Romantasy is the number of times I've seen the like love interest described as like, oh, they have this like scar or this deformity, but it somehow makes them more handsome. I'm like, okay, like I get it. But like your flaw can't be that. It's like when you're in a job interview and they're like, what's your biggest weakness? And it's like, that I have no weaknesses, or I work too hard. Like that's not really what they're looking for.
I'm a
they're looking for some
perfectionist and I want everything to be perfect.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's funny. But there was the Hunchback of Notre Dame, and he got a little haughty at the end. So.
Well, he's a little bit that's a problematic story in a whole number of ways.
Okay. All right. Well, Brittany, once again, how can we find you? And you are looking for a street team, right? So
yeah, so I'm looking for ARC readers. I'm looking for anybody who's interested in being part of my street team. I'm on Instagram, Brittney Gossin Writes. All one word, no periods, no nothing. Yep, Brittney Gossin Writes. And as my mother would say, Brittany. So 3 syllables. Yeah, Brittney Gossin Writes on Instagram. And yeah, I mean, I would absolutely love for people to, reach out and hopefully enjoy my work.
Yeah, I think this is going to be, I just love the sound of it. I'm not into Romantasy, but your plot
you are
story
now.
characters. I am now.
You're starting at a low spice level, and you can kick it up to, 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever Holly's gonna throw your way.
And that's what I wasn't sure about is what's the Scoville on this? Like 5 is the spiciest, 5 is just raw.
5 is,
Carolina Reapers. Sex all the time. What's that?
Yeah.
Okay, so
5 I feel like 5 is definitely like haunting Adelaide. 5 it would be like very not taboo, but like taboo.
Flowers in the Attic would be a 5 or a 6, I guess.
I haven't read that one.
Yeah, that's an 80s book.
Actually,
mean,
I haven't even read Haunting Adelaide because that's even a little bit much for me.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I just know, like Elsie Silver Flawless, I would give like a 4 in spice. So like there's quite a few spicy scenes. But something that I like is that her spicy scenes aren't for the sake of spice. It's woven into and makes sense for the characters. And oh, here's another don't have your characters who are a virgin automatically jump in acting like they know whatever it is that they're doing, because let's be honest, they don't.
That's every teenage boy out there.
Yeah. Yeah, no kidding. That's a really good one.
That is a good one. I feel like we
Another being real.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we definitely need to have Brittany back because we definitely have more questions about spice level and all this stuff. So
I love that, and I love to talk. So
yeah, you're perfect. You're perfect. Now, when are you planning on releasing your book?
So the book actually releases August 27th.
Okay.
So I have a little bit of time. It goes to my editor officially on April 1st. And then she'll get it back to me in May. And then I'm going to give myself 2 weeks to make her adjustments. Then it goes to my line editor. And then hopefully everything will be situated because I am trying to put ARCs out by the end of June.
Okay.
So, which will give people, like July and August to read the ARC and then have the release.
Perfect.
So.
All right. That's very exciting. I'm so excited for you. Good for you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, don't forget to write and subscribe to our channels at the link below so you don't miss any of the Writers Room content. We always love to hear from our listeners, so if you have a question or topic you want us to dive into, please get in touch. And also, talk about Romantasy, you guys, in the comments. Do you have any questions for Brittany or Holly or Austin? Not for me, because I don't know anything. But until then, we'll see you guys. Thank you, Brittany. We had a blast with you, and I know you're going to come on again. We have to have you on again.
Thank you so much. I had a great time. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.
Bye, guys.